I caught my husband's affair. When his mistress accidentally sent me the text, "Your wife is so pathetic, she'll never figure us out." I didn't confront him. Instead, I spent 3 months planning. When he finally asked for a divorce, he had no idea what was coming. The text arrived at 2:47 a.m. while I was feeding our restless baby. "Your wife is so pathetic, she'll never figure us out. Can't wait to see her face when you finally dump her for someone who actually matters." Wrong number. Except it wasn't. The sender was listed as office temp in my husband's phone, which I was using because mine had died. But I recognized that writing style immediately. Those specific emojis. The way she capitalized entire words for emphasis. It was Vanessa from his marketing firm. I stared at the screen, our 6-month-old daughter still crying in my arms, milk running down my unwashed pajamas, 5 years of marriage, a mortgage, a baby who'd kept me up for 200 nights straight while Derek complained about being tired from actual work. My hands were shaking, but not from exhaustion anymore. I scrolled up through their conversation, months of messages, meeting at hotels during his client lunches, her complaining about having to see me at the office Christmas party, him promising he'd leave me once the baby situation calmed down. The baby situation. Our daughter wasn't even a situation to him, she was an inconvenience. I took a screenshot of everything, then deleted the evidence of me seeing it. The next morning, Derek came downstairs whistling, kissing my forehead like the devoted husband he pretended to be. "Sleep okay?" he asked, already knowing I hadn't. "Like a baby," I lied, bouncing our actual baby on my hip. He laughed at his own joke and headed to work. To her. That's when I started planning. For 3 months, I played the perfect wife. I smiled when he worked late. I thanked him for the flowers he brought home, the same ones I'd seen on Vanessa's Instagram story hours earlier. I even suggested he take that work trip to Chicago, knowing exactly who he'd be meeting there. While he was busy playing house with his mistress, I was busy playing chess. I documented everything, hired a private investigator, transferred money into accounts he didn't know existed. Most importantly, I started recording our conversations, particularly the ones where he complained about supporting a lazy wife who doesn't contribute anything. 3 months later, Derek finally worked up the courage to ask for what he thought he wanted. "I think we should talk about our future," he said over dinner, the same rehearsed speech I'd heard him practicing in the shower. "Of course," I replied, cutting my steak with surgical precision. "I've been thinking the same thing." He looked surprised by my calm reaction. What happened next would change everything. Derek shifted uncomfortably in his chair, clearly not expecting my composed response. He'd probably rehearsed this moment with Vanessa, imagining tears and begging. "I mean," he continued, "we've grown apart. We want different things. Maybe it's better if we get divorced?" I finished for him, taking another bite of steak. "I agree completely." His mouth fell open. This wasn't going according to script. "You agree?" "Absolutely. In fact, I've already spoken with a lawyer." The color drained from his face. "When?" "3 months ago. Right after I got that interesting text meant for you." Derek's fork clattered against his plate. "What text?" I pulled out my phone and read Vanessa's message aloud, complete with the laughing emoji. His face went through about 17 different expressions before settling on panic. "I can explain." "Oh, you don't need to explain anything," I said, standing to clear the dishes. "Your girlfriend was very thorough in her messages. The hotel receipts I found were also quite explanatory." Derek jumped up, following me to the kitchen. "Listen, I know this looks bad, but it looks exactly like what it is. A pathetic middle-aged man throwing away his family for a 24-year-old who calls his wife pathetic." I rinsed my plate calmly. "The irony isn't lost on me. I never meant for you to find out like this. You never meant for me to find out at all. There's a difference." He tried to touch my shoulder, but I stepped away. "I know I messed up, but maybe we can work through this. For the baby." I laughed. Actually laughed. "Now you care about the baby? The same baby you called a situation that needed to calm down before you could leave me?" His face went white. "You recorded our conversations? Just the ones where you revealed your true character. Like when you told Vanessa I was a leech who never worked a day in my life." I dried my hands methodically. Interesting perspective, considering I managed our household, raised our child, and somehow found time to document your affair while you thought I was too stupid to notice. Derek slumped against the counter. "What do you want?" "What I want is irrelevant. What I'm getting is everything." I opened my laptop and showed him a spreadsheet. "This is our complete financial picture. Assets, debts, projections." He squinted at the screen. "How did you get access to your hidden accounts? Your cryptocurrency investments? The money you moved to pay for hotel rooms?" I scrolled through the documents. "I may not have a traditional job, Derek, but I have a finance degree, and 3 months of very motivated free time." His hands started shaking. "You can't just take everything." "Actually, I can. You see, while you were busy planning your exit strategy with your girlfriend, I was planning mine with a lawyer. A very good lawyer who specializes in infidelity cases." I pulled up another document. "In our state, adultery affects asset division, especially when the cheating spouse uses marital funds to support the affair. Those $400 dinners, weekend getaways, the jewelry you bought her, all documented." Derek's voice cracked. "I'll fight this." "With what money?" "Oh, you mean the accounts I already had frozen pending the divorce proceedings?" I tilted my head sympathetically. "Or maybe you're thinking of borrowing from Vanessa. Except she doesn't know about the gambling debts you've been hiding, does she?" The blood drained from his face completely. How do you know about your poker losses? The sports betting? The money you borrowed from your retirement account? I closed the laptop. Derek, for someone conducting a secret affair, you're remarkably bad at keeping secrets. He collapsed into a chair. This isn't fair. Fair? I sat across from him, voice deadly calm. Fair would have been you acting like a husband and father instead of a teenage boy with a midlife crisis. Fair would have been you asking for a divorce before starting an affair. Fair would have been you not calling the mother of your child pathetic to your mistress. Tears started rolling down his cheeks. I can change. I'll end things with Vanessa. We can go to counseling. Oh, you don't need to end things with Vanessa. In fact, I think you should pursue that relationship fully. Hope flickered in his eyes. Because, I continued, someone should warn her what she's getting into. I've prepared a nice folder for her containing all your financial records, including the debt she'll inherit if she marries you, plus documentation of your gambling addiction and the pattern of lies you've maintained. You wouldn't. I already did. I sent it to her yesterday, along with screenshots of you calling her desperate and clingy in your conversations with your poker buddies. I smiled sweetly. Turns out you weren't just lying to me. Derek's phone started buzzing. Vanessa's name flashed on the screen. He looked at it in horror. Aren't you going to answer? She's probably calling to discuss your future together. He declined the call, but it immediately rang again. Derek, I said gently, I want you to understand something. I didn't destroy your life. You did. I just documented it. His phone kept ringing. Text messages started popping up on his screen. From Vanessa, his coworkers, his gambling buddies. Word was spreading fast. 3 months ago, when I got that text, I had a choice. I could have confronted you, screamed, begged, made a scene. Instead, I chose to protect myself and our daughter. I stood up. I chose to be strategic instead of pathetic. Derek looked up at me, broken. Where am I supposed to go? That's not my problem anymore, but I hear the Motel 6 has weekly rates. I walked upstairs to pack his bags. Everything I'd learned about him over 3 months of investigation went into those suitcases. His hidden gambling apps, his credit card statements, the love letters he'd written to 3 different women before Vanessa. When I came back down, he was still sitting at the table, staring at his buzzing phone. Your things are by the door, I said. My lawyer will contact you about visitation arrangements for our daughter. Supervised visitation, given your current instability. Supervised? His voice was barely a whisper. Derek, you called your own child a situation. You gambled away her college fund. You brought your mistress to our home while I was at my mother's funeral. I picked up our daughter from her high chair. Did you really think I'd trust you alone with her? He stood slowly, like an old man. I loved you once. No, I said, holding our baby close. You loved the idea of me, the wife who'd stay home, stay quiet, stay grateful. You never loved the actual me. As he picked up his suitcases, Derek turned back one final time. I'm sorry. I'm not. This is the first honest conversation we've had in years. After he left, I sat in our living room, my living room now, and called my sister. It's done, I said when she answered. How do you feel? I looked around at the home I'd fought to keep, at my daughter playing peacefully in her bouncer, at the life I'd managed to save through pure determination. Free, I said. I feel free. But the story didn't end there. Derek's departure was just the beginning of the unraveling I'd set in motion. The next morning, I received a call from my private investigator, Patricia, a former police detective who specialized in financial fraud cases. You're going to want to see this, she said. Can you meet me at my office? An hour later, Patricia spread dozens of documents across her desk. Bank statements, credit reports, business filings, phone records, a paper trail that painted a picture far worse than I'd imagined. Your husband isn't just having an affair, she said. He's been systematically stealing from his company for 2 years. My stomach dropped. Stealing how? Ghost employees on the payroll, fake vendor invoices, expense account fraud. He's embezzled close to $200,000. Patricia pointed to highlighted sections. And here's the kicker. He's been using Vanessa's information to set up shell companies. She's unknowingly involved in money laundering. I stared at the evidence. Does she know? Doubtful. Her credit score took a massive hit 6 months ago, but she probably thinks it's from the student loans Derek convinced her to consolidate. Patricia leaned back. This girl isn't just his mistress. She's his unwitting accomplice. The full scope of Derek's deception was staggering. He hadn't just betrayed our marriage. He'd built an entire criminal enterprise around his lies. What happens now? I asked. That depends on you. We can turn this over to the FBI, or... Patricia paused. We can use it as leverage. I thought about Vanessa, barely older than my sister, caught up in something she couldn't possibly understand. I thought about Derek's company, a family business run by decent people who trusted him. And I thought about my daughter, who deserved better than having a father in federal prison. I want to talk to someone first, I said. That afternoon, I called Derek's boss, Henry Walsh, a man who'd given Derek his first real job 15 years ago, and treated him like a son. Mrs. Peterson? Henry sounded surprised. How can I help you? I think we need to meet. I have information about your company that you need to see. 2 hours later, I sat in Henry's office with Patricia, and our evidence spread across his conference table. Henry's face aged 10 years as we walked him through Derek's crimes. Jesus Christ, he whispered, rubbing his temples. The board is going to want his head. There's more, I said quietly. He's been using company funds to support his affair. The woman involved doesn't know about the financial crimes, but she's been named on several fraudulent documents. Henry looked sick. How long have you known? I discovered the affair 3 months ago. The financial crimes came to light yesterday. I met his eyes. I wanted to give you the chance to handle this internally before it becomes a federal case. What are you proposing? Full restitution, immediate resignation, cooperation with your internal audit. In exchange, we keep this between us unless he forces our hand. Henry was quiet for a long moment. And if he refuses? Then Patricia makes some phone calls, and Derek spends the next decade in federal prison. That evening, Henry called Derek and requested an emergency meeting. I wasn't there, but Patricia had planted recording devices in Henry's office. Completely legal, since Henry consented. Derek arrived confident, probably thinking he was getting a promotion. The recording captured everything. Henry laying out the evidence, Derek's denials crumbling as the proof mounted, his eventual breakdown when he realized he was caught. You have until tomorrow morning to decide, Henry told him. Full confession, complete restitution, and resignation. Or we call the authorities. Derek chose self-preservation. The next day, he signed a confession admitting to embezzlement and fraud. He agreed to repay every penny, even if it meant working minimum wage jobs for the rest of his life. Henry fired him quietly, telling the staff he'd left for personal reasons. But Derek's humiliation was just beginning. That same afternoon, Vanessa received a registered letter containing copies of every fraudulent document bearing her name, along with a complete breakdown of how Derek had destroyed her credit and potentially implicated her in federal crimes. She called me within an hour. Mrs. Peterson? Her voice was shaking. I got your package. I don't understand what this means. I met her at a coffee shop downtown. Up close, Vanessa looked even younger than her photos. Tired, scared, wearing the kind of cheap business attire that screamed recent college graduate still paying off loans. Vanessa, I said gently, Derek has been using your personal information to commit financial crimes. You're not in trouble, but you need to protect yourself. I explained everything. The shell companies, the damaged credit, the trail of evidence that could implicate her if investigators came looking. Her face went white as the reality sank in. He told me he was taking care of the loan consolidation paperwork, she whispered. He said it would help my credit score. He was using you to hide stolen money. The man you've been dating is a criminal. Vanessa started crying. Not the dramatic tears of a woman losing her lover, but the quiet sobs of someone realizing they'd been completely fooled. What do I do now? She asked. I slid a business card across the table. This is a financial attorney who specializes in identity theft. She'll help you untangle the mess Derek created. As for the rest, I paused. That's up to you. Vanessa looked at the card, then at me. Why are you helping me? I slept with your husband. You slept with a man who lied to both of us. The difference is, I knew who I married. You had no idea. 2 weeks later, Derek called me from his new studio apartment, voice slurred with alcohol. You destroyed everything, he said. My job, my relationship, my future. Are you happy now? Derek, I didn't destroy anything. I just stopped enabling your destruction of other people. Vanessa won't even talk to me. She changed her number. Smart girl. She figured out you were using her. I loved her. You loved having someone who didn't know your history. Someone who believed your lies. I shifted our daughter to my other hip. But people aren't toys, Derek. You can't just discard them when they stop being useful. I want to see my daughter. Then show up to your supervised visits sober. Follow the custody agreement. Prove you can be a father instead of just someone who happened to contribute sperm. He hung up without saying goodbye. Over the next few months, I watched Derek's life continue its downward spiral from a safe distance. He missed 3 supervised visits because he was too drunk to drive. He lost his apartment and moved in with his mother. He started working at a car wash, making barely enough to cover his court-ordered restitution payments. Meanwhile, Vanessa rebuilt her life with impressive determination. She changed careers, moving from marketing to victim advocacy. The last I heard, she was engaged to a teacher she met at a financial literacy workshop. As for me, I discovered something unexpected during those 3 months of investigation. I was actually good at it. Really good. Patricia offered me a position at her firm, but I had a different idea. I started my own practice specializing in financial infidelity cases, helping other women uncover hidden assets and document abuse. My first client was a teacher whose husband claimed they were broke while hiding $50,000 in cryptocurrency. My second was a nurse whose husband had been stealing from their joint accounts to fund his drug addiction. Within 6 months, I had a waiting list. The work was deeply satisfying in a way I'd never experienced. Every case felt personal because I understood the betrayal, the self-doubt, the moment when you realize the person you trusted most has been systematically destroying your life. Derek continued to spiral. He violated his visitation agreement by showing up drunk and screaming at his mother's house. The judge suspended his parental rights entirely pending completion of a substance abuse program. 1 year after our divorce was finalized, Derek was arrested for attempting to cash forge checks at 3 different banks. Apparently, his minimum wage job wasn't covering his restitution payments, so he decided to return to crime. This time, there was no quiet resignation or internal handling. Derek went to federal prison for 3 years. I felt nothing when I got the call from his lawyer. No satisfaction, no sadness, just relief that my daughter would be protected from his chaos for at least the next few years. Is Daddy coming home? My daughter asked that night as I tucked her into bed. She was 3 now, old enough to notice his absence, but too young to understand why. Daddy made some bad choices, I told her. He needs to learn how to make better ones before he can visit us again. She nodded seriously, then went back to her coloring book, a picture of a house with stick figures representing our family. Notably, she'd only drawn 2 people, herself and me. 2 years into Derek's prison sentence, I received an unexpected letter. It was from Vanessa, now married and living in Oregon. "I wanted to thank you," she wrote. "Not just for exposing Derek's crimes, but for treating me like a person instead of an enemy. You could have destroyed me along with him, but you chose compassion instead. I work with financial abuse victims now, and I tell them all about the woman who saved my life by telling me the truth." I kept that letter in my desk drawer, a reminder that sometimes the right choice isn't the easiest one. Derek was released after serving 2.5 years. By then, my daughter was almost 6 and had no memory of him living with us. His attempts at rebuilding a relationship with her were awkward and forced. Supervised visits where he tried too hard to be the fun dad while she sat politely but distantly. "She doesn't remember me," he complained to his parole officer during one of their required check-ins. "Then give her reasons to want to know you now," the officer replied. But Derek never learned that lesson. He wanted the reward without putting in the work, the relationship without earning the trust. After 6 months of stilted visits, he stopped showing up altogether. "Daddy doesn't want to see me anymore," my daughter observed one Saturday when Derek failed to appear for their scheduled visit. "Some people aren't ready to be parents," I told her. "That's not your fault. That's their loss." During this time, my business continued to grow. I'd hired 3 investigators and a paralegal. We'd helped over 200 women uncover financial abuse, hidden assets, and infidelity. The work was emotionally draining but incredibly rewarding. One case particularly stood out. A woman named Claire came to me after discovering her husband had been stealing from their children's college funds to support his gambling addiction. Like me, she'd been dismissed as paranoid when she questioned the discrepancies in their accounts. "He made me feel crazy," she told me during our first meeting. "Every time I asked about money, he'd tell me I was too emotional to understand finances." I knew that feeling intimately. Derek had used the same tactics, gaslighting me into believing my concerns were irrational while he systematically looted our assets. Claire's case took 8 months to build. Her husband had been careful, using multiple banks and cryptocurrency exchanges to hide his gambling losses. But Patricia and I were more careful. We documented everything: the timing of withdrawals, the correlation with major sporting events, the pattern of lies he'd told to cover his tracks. When we presented our evidence to Claire's lawyer, her husband's attorney immediately pushed for settlement. He knew they couldn't win at trial. Claire walked away with the house, full custody of their 2 children, and enough assets to secure their future. Her husband was ordered into gambling addiction treatment and supervised visitation. "I can't believe I thought I was going crazy," Claire told me after the settlement was finalized. "He had me convinced I was the problem." "That's what they do," I explained. "They make us doubt our own perceptions so we won't trust what we're seeing." Stories like Claire's reminded me why the work mattered. Every case was different, but the pattern was always the same: men who treated their wives like obstacles to overcome rather than partners to respect. 3 years after Derek's release from prison, I received a call that would change everything. It was from Detective Morrison with the Financial Crimes Unit. "Mrs. Peterson, we need to talk. It's about your ex-husband." My blood ran cold. "What's he done now?" "He's dead." Derek had been found in his apartment, apparently from a drug overdose. He'd been using again, something his parole officer had suspected but couldn't prove. The needle was still in his arm when the landlord found him 3 days later. I felt numb sitting in the detective's office, listening to the details of Derek's final months. He'd lost another job for stealing, been evicted twice. His mother had finally cut him off financially after he'd pawned her wedding ring. "We found these in his apartment," Detective Morrison said, sliding a manila envelope across the desk. Letters he'd written but never sent. There were dozens of them. Letters to me, to our daughter, to Vanessa, to Henry Walsh, rambling apologies and accusations, promises to change mixed with blame for his circumstances. The letter addressed to me was 17 pages long, written in Derek's increasingly erratic handwriting. It started with apologies, but quickly devolved into familiar patterns. I was too controlling. I'd never understood his needs. I'd destroyed his life with my vindictive pursuit of justice. Even in death, Derek couldn't take responsibility for his choices. The letter to our daughter was different, shorter, sadder. He tried to explain why he'd disappeared from her life, why he couldn't be the father she deserved. For once, he seemed to understand the pain he'd caused. "I know you probably don't remember me," he'd written. "Maybe that's better. You're growing up with a mother who's strong enough to protect you from people like me." I read that line 3 times, surprised by the brief moment of clarity in Derek's otherwise self-serving narrative. "What happens now?" I asked Detective Morrison. "That's up to you. He didn't have a will or any assets. The state can handle burial arrangements or—" "I'll take care of it," I said quietly. Not because I owed Derek anything, but because my daughter might someday ask about her father's final resting place. She deserved to have answers. The funeral was small, just me, Derek's mother, and a few former coworkers who'd known him before everything fell apart. Henry Walsh came, probably out of obligation more than grief. Vanessa sent flowers but didn't attend. As they lowered Derek's coffin into the ground, I thought about the man I'd married versus the man he'd become. Or maybe he'd always been this person, and I'd just been too young and naive to see it. Derek's mother approached me after the service, her eyes red from crying. "I know what he did to you," she said quietly. "I know you had every right to hate him. Thank you for this." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. Despite everything, I felt sad for the waste of it all. The potential squandered, the relationships destroyed, the daughter who would grow up with only fragments of memories about her father. That night, I sat with my daughter, now 9 years old, and told her about Derek's death. She listened solemnly, asking practical questions about what this meant for her. "Are you sad?" she asked. "I'm sad that he couldn't figure out how to be better," I told her honestly. "I'm sad that he missed the chance to know you." "I'm not sad," she said matter-of-factly. "I already have a family." She was right. We'd built something strong and healthy from the ashes of Derek's destruction. My sister's family, my business partners, the community of women I'd helped over the years, we'd created our own definition of family based on choice rather than obligation. 5 years after Derek's death, my daughter graduated high school as valedictorian. She'd been accepted to Stanford with a full scholarship to study biomedical engineering. The shy little girl who'd once asked why daddy didn't come home had grown into a confident young woman who knew her worth. During her graduation speech, she talked about resilience and the importance of surrounding yourself with people who believe in your potential. She never mentioned Derek, but she thanked me for showing her that strength looks like taking action rather than accepting circumstances. That fall, as I helped her pack for college, she found a box of old photos in the closet. Most were pictures of our life together, but at the bottom was Derek's final letter to her. "Should I read it?" she asked. "Only if you want to. It won't change anything about who you are or what you've accomplished." She set the letter aside without opening it. "Maybe someday, but not today." I respected her choice. She'd built her identity without Derek's influence, and she had the right to decide if and when she wanted to hear his version of events. My business had evolved over the years into something larger than I'd ever imagined. We now offered support groups, financial literacy workshops, and legal advocacy for women facing economic abuse. I'd written a book about recognizing financial infidelity that had become a bestseller. The irony wasn't lost on me. Derek's betrayal had ultimately led to my most meaningful work. His attempts to diminish me had instead revealed strengths I'd never known I possessed. On the 10-year anniversary of that first devastating text message, I received an email from a woman named Jessica. She'd read my book and recognized her own story in the pages. "My husband has been hiding money in cryptocurrency accounts," she wrote. "He tells me I'm paranoid when I ask about our finance. I found your book at the library and realized I'm not crazy. Can you help me?" I smiled as I typed my response, remembering the scared and isolated woman I'd been a decade ago. That woman would never have imagined the life I'd built, the people I'd helped, or the strength I'd discovered in the darkest moments. Derek had been wrong about everything, but especially about one thing. I was never pathetic. I was patient, strategic, and ultimately unstoppable. And that made all the difference. Today, my daughter is thriving in her engineering program. She calls me every Sunday to share stories about her classes, her research projects, and the young women she mentors in STEM fields. She's never asked about Derek's letter, and I've never pressured her to engage with his memory. Last month, she told me she was writing her own letter to the woman who'd received that first cruel text message 10 years ago. "I want to thank her," my daughter said. "If she hadn't been strong enough to plan instead of react, we might never have escaped. She saved both our lives." I realized she was talking about me, about the version of myself I'd had to become to survive Derek's betrayal. In her mind, I was both the victim and the hero of our story. Maybe she was right. Maybe we all have multiple versions of ourselves waiting to emerge when circumstances demand it. Derek had tried to reduce me to a single narrative, the pathetic wife who would never figure anything out. But he'd underestimated the woman who would emerge from his attempts to destroy me, the woman who would turn his cruelty into purpose, his lies into truth, and his legacy of destruction into a foundation for rebuilding. 10 years later, I can honestly say that Vanessa's text was the best thing that ever happened to me. Not because I enjoyed the pain, but because it forced me to discover who I really was beneath the role I'd been playing. I was never the pathetic wife Derek and Vanessa thought they were fooling. I was the woman who would prove them wrong, one carefully documented step at a time.